Hello everyone, this is Pomum bringing you a brand new tier list, a Fire Emblem 1 tier list. This is a game I've beaten once, but because I recently beat FE3 also, and part of FE3, the first book, is basically just a direct remake with not a lot of difference from FE1, just some chapters missing. I thought this would be a good moment to do a tier list of this game. Whenever I have a doubt between if I should consider FE1 or FE3 for how good a character is, like for example, being forced to dismount, which is an FE3 only feature, I'll mostly lean to FE1, just so you know. So I'll try to make this as FE1 focus as I can, okay? This is the oldest Fire Emblem installment, so a pretty old game, and I think this could be a pretty useful tier list for anyone that wants to play the game, because when looking into older games, you really want to know which character is going to be just a waste of time. And there are some waste of time characters in this game, for sure. So, we're going to begin with Abel. Abel, well, a lot of the characters in this game, by the way, if you know anything about Fire Emblem and you know about famous archetypes we like to use in the community, well, a lot of the characters in this game define the archetypes. So Abel, for example, together with Cain, right here a bit to the right, is one of the Christmas Cavaliers. Christmas Cavaliers means they are speedy, tanky, and fast cavalry that you get from the beginning of the game that doesn't normally have a lot of weaknesses, but Abel tends to be a bit speedier and with more skill and a bit of resistance maybe, depending on the game, and Abel tends to have like more strength, more defense, and more luck. So Abel has a bit more of a dodgy, speedier build, you could say even more offensive, while Abel is more, you know, tankier, but can hit hard maybe on a single hit. My experience with Abel was that he was an incredible unit. I think that's going to surprise no one. Cavalry is very broken in FE1. Having mobility in that game is very valuable, and some of the units with the best growths are the Christmas Cavs. They get a lot of room to grow. They normally don't have to contest their promotion with anyone, because you don't really want to give the Night Crest to one of your armors. So in this game where items are, promotion items are fixed to be used on a certain class, Abel and Cain really don't face a lot of competition for the Night Crest. So I think using Abel and Cain just comes very, very, very naturally. And yeah, Abel particularly I think I used a lot. I think in FE3 book 1 I let him die, either him or Cain, because I was stuck in a chapter where I had to reset like 2 times, and on the 3rd I just said, okay, yes, I'm going to let you down. I'm going to let you, yes, go, even though I know you're very good. But yeah, that doesn't mean like Abel, I have anything against Abel. I think he's an incredible unit, being able to also use javelins, being able to use swords. So in FE1, one of the few units that can go for like multiple weapon types. Yeah, I honestly think, even though it might seem like an exaggeration, in FE1 we're starting with an S tier with Abel, okay? He has one of the best units in the game, to be honest. Okay, yeah, that's all about Abel. Then second one is Arran. Arran from the Arran and Samson archetype, meaning 2 units that in the same chapter you have to decide in between. So I think it's on chapter, well, I don't know the number of the chapter, but it's the Altea Liberation chapter where you go back to Marth's homeland. You have to pick between 2 villages. In one of them you get Arran, and in the other you get Samson. Samson is a mercenary. Well, Samson is a hero, actually, a promoted hero. And Arran is a promoted paladin. They aren't as powerful as a unit of those classes that you have trained for a while, but of course they come for free. So that means Arran is just a very powerful, very mobile unit that comes with a silver lance, I'm pretty sure, so also a pretty decent weapon experience. Yeah, he's not especially speedy, he might struggle doubling some enemies, but for a filler unit, he's as good as they come. He does come slightly late into the story, I feel, because Altea Liberation is what, like chapter 15-16 out of 22. So he doesn't have a lot of room to do things. So I'm not willing to put him very high just because of that. And well, and because he's not like, even when he joins, he's not going to be one of the best units in your team. But yes, due to the low investment you have to do to be able to use Arran, I think he deserves to be at least on B tier. Okay? I think B tier is perfectly fair for Arran. He does a good job. He's a bit better than the average. And he's like more than a bit better than the average, but he also has a lower use time than the average. So with all of that taken into consideration, putting him on B tier, I think that's completely fair. Alright. Then would be Astram. Astram the mercenary. Astram comes also pretty late, but unlike Arran, I'd say that Astram is like very, very, very solid. Stronger than Samson. I remember that. I don't know if he's the one to come with the Mercurius. No, I'm confusing things with FE3. The one that comes with the Mercurius in this game is Est. But yeah, he joins during the last chapters, more or less. Can be recruited by media. Joins like 2 chapters after Arran, if you think about it. Can be recruited by media, who's his lover. And yeah, he's just a very, very solid mercenary. Very solid filler unit, you could say. Similar to Arran in a lot of aspects, like comes with high weapon level, so you want to use weapon, like expensive weaponry from the beginning, and he can do a good job. In a chapter with good amount of armor, so he's a good candidate for the armor slayer if you maybe don't have a good unit to do that. I think Astram is very, very solid. Maybe not as powerful as FE3 makes him out to be, where he's almost like a Black Knight pursuing you throughout the game. But I do think he's, for the few chapters that he loses compared to Arran, he's much better as a unit. I don't think that quite gets him into the A tier, because the availability, as I said, is pretty bad. But he's a solid B tier, and I'm going to say, even before filling the rest of the spots, he's going to remain at the top of the B tier, or at least very close. Okay, next is Bantu. Bantu is the only other mana kit you get aside from Tiki, and he's much less powerful. You get him during chapter 6 or 7, the chapter where you kind of face Minerva, although she doesn't really. She decides to leave after a while. You go to a village to recruit him with Marth, and you get him. I don't know if it's on the previous chapter or something like that. You get a Firestone that you can give to Bantu. Whatever the case, Bantu, like any other mana kit, needs to use up his Dragonstone to transform. And I feel like that's a slightly bigger problem for him than Tiki. Because Tiki, you get her late enough that uses in the Dragonstone don't matter. Bantu has to use the same Firestone for a while. I think you might get another one during the late game, but I'm not completely sure. I didn't use Bantu that much, mainly because the Firestone just doesn't give the same crazy bonuses that the Divine Stone does. Transforming into a Fire Dragon makes you tanky on the physical side, but not so much on the special one. Bantu's growths are nothing crazy. He can act as a good wall and as sort of a carry during the early to mid game, but after that, the movement and just the tankiness falling off a bit, I think make him slightly worse than most of the other options that can maybe, I don't know, dodge tank. You would also have to be careful of Worm Slayers, I guess, although I don't think that's a problem, and of mages, because he's pretty fragile against mages, just like any other enemy mana kit. So I would put Bantu lower. It's true he's... I mean, there's a lot of true garbage in this game, so I kind of don't want to put him in D tier, but maybe he deserves it. Yeah, I don't know. I really think that Bantu... He's top of D tier for now, okay? If C tier ends up being too empty, then I'm going to move him to C tier, because by definition, these two should be the most filled, because they represent the average of a unit, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say here is, if you're watching this for a recommendation, I probably wouldn't recommend using Bantu, even though it's pretty cool to use a mana kit. Yes, use him if you feel like it's very cool to use a mana kit. Otherwise, wait for a bit and you'll get a much better one. Okay, continuing with the B, we have Barst. Barst comes on chapter 2 and can use axes. No, this isn't Barst actually. Sorry, this is Barst. This is Barst. Okay, now the axe using guys have a big thing going on for them, which is the hand axe. The hand axe is pretty useful on the early game of FA1, and I'd say even a defining weapon of Barst's inventory, because I'm pretty sure it's Barst that has it at the beginning. Of course, you can trade it to someone else, but in FA1 trading is very painful because you have to go into the convoy, then take it out. So probably for the at least chapter 2, the entire chapter 2, you're going to have the hand axe on Barst, and he's going to be the one that helps Ogma against the pirates to the north of the starting point. So Barst is useful in there, but as the game goes on, it doesn't get an option to promote. And he kind of remains stuck with that, you know, hand axe throwing capability that doesn't make him crazy. And supposedly he's able to do damage, like good damage against enemies, but it doesn't count for much when you have people that can double and you can have people that can, you know, attack from range, do magical damage. I don't think you'll ever need attack focus unit like a fighter in FE1, so I don't think Barst is very good. He's the best out of the fighters, but he's going into the D tier for me. Going into the D tier. Axes, yes, don't really work in this game. There's no weapon advantage, so you can't take advantage of axes to be more accurate against lances, for example. You're always going to stay with that shaky hit. On terrain is going to get even worse, so I don't think Barst can do much. Alright, this guy, starting with the B, his name is, of course I didn't forget, it's Beck. Beck is one of 2 ballisticians that you get in this game. Meaning units that can attack from very long range and weaken people for you and all that. Ballisticians are useful, but I wouldn't call them strong. You can't rely on them to kill anyone, but they can be, you know, selectively they can be used to do some cool stuff. I do think Beck is at least like, you know, has a niche, so I'd go with C tier. At least we have him on the average. There might be some kind of crazy game-breaking strategies you can do with Ballistician that actually make, you know, Beck and Jake the best units in this game, but because I don't know, I have to put him on C tier. The weaponry for Ballista I also think is pretty expensive, so it's not like you can spam this through the whole game, but when you get the opportunity to soften an enemy for someone to kill without taking a counter, that's something cool. Against very tanky enemies they are going to do nothing, but well, they can trivialize some situations with enemy flyers, stuff like that. For example, on Astram's joining chapter, which I'm pretty sure is chapter 15, I'd say Beck and Jake both are very useful to deploy there because of the continuous reinforcements of flyers. So yeah, putting Beck on C tier just because I don't... He has his niche, not like he's useless, he doesn't really get outclassed by anyone but Jake, and you can always use both if you have the spot. I'd say he can be useful, so I'm going to leave him at C tier, which is like average. For Bishop Boah, you get during the Ageless Palace mission, which is sort of a difficult map, and Boah, together with some other units, is stuck in a room until you rescue him. He's a pretty serviceable mage, pre-promoted at that, so he can also heal, which is, I'd say, very useful. Doesn't quite reach the same heights as a trained mage or good pre-promo like Wendell. I'd say Wendell is much better, has a better join time also. He joins very early, like chapter 5. So getting Boah, you know, it's going to take a bit longer and he's not going to give you the same results, but he can still be like a serviceable mage that has a bit of an issue with being able to heal whenever his turn is free from attacking. Like, you know, this guy doesn't need to attack, suddenly I get a free healer and I can do that. And that's without expending a Guiding Ring to promote one of your base mages. So yeah, weapon experience is also pretty good. I do remember that. I think he can use Thoron on base or something like that, because Camus gives you Thoron on 1 or 2 chapters after you get him, and he says it's for Bishop Boah. So yeah, Bishop Boah is a pretty serviceable guy. I wouldn't call him crazy. I say he goes around here. Compared to Arran, and they are sort of similar, I think he's better because he joins earlier and healing is pretty good. But I wouldn't put him higher than that. I do think Astram's combat is much better, and I do think Astram... Yeah, I just think Astram is better. So correct me if you think I'm wrong, but yeah. Alright, now this is Barst. And everything I've said about Barst applies to Barst. Just so you know, only I think Barst is slightly better. I remember looking at their stats somewhere and thinking, okay, Barst is better. The starting inventory on Barst is also better, so he gets a bit of an upper hand at the beginning. So Barst is yes, why would I use Barst when I can use Barst? So this is basically my reasoning. They are the same, only slightly worse in the case of Barst. In the case of Barst, sorry. They even, you know, A confused mind might say they look similar, but Barst is clearly blue, so that's not the case. Jeorge is just one of those many clones of a unit that you get in FE1, and I don't have much to say about him once I've talked about the original one. Oh, this is a pretty original unit here. Starting with the C, this is Shiida. Okay, Shiida, Marth's beloved wife later on in the story. Shiida is the first flyer you get in the game, and you get her in chapter 1. If this was a game where you can visit villages with a flyer or do stuff like that or rescue, she might be a bit more useful, but as it stands, she's strong but not crazy. She can do damage against enemies, her growths don't really give her a lot of strength, so she depends a lot on doubling. She can use swords and lances, which is cool. She will get outclassed by some other units later on in the game. I do think that Shiida is pretty useful just because of not getting flyers for a while. Like you're going to have to depend a lot on her for flying combat. So I'm going to... yeah, and the rain in FE1 can also be pretty annoying. If it wasn't for the big presence of Palestinians, I would put her... no, I still think I'm going to put her on A tier. Yes, you know, joins on chapter 1, remains useful throughout the game, can grow pretty well, you know. If you get lucky with strength, I'm guessing she can do incredible damage. And, you know, if you decide to promote her, then suddenly you get a Wyvern, which is a solid class with a big bonus on defense compared to Pegasus. Weapon ranks aren't crazy, but she just has so much room to grow and a lot of flexibility in the maps because of her flying movement that I think having her on A tier is fair. Okay, now continuing with the C, this has to be Caesar. Caesar that you get... I don't remember exactly what chapter it is, but I do remember it's the same chapter where you get Radd, obviously, together with him and Roger. It's sort of early, but the problem with Caesar and Radd both is that they get very outclassed by previous mercenaries. So they don't bring anything unique to the table. I mean, they can be useful. I think I sort of tried to use them to intercept a pirate and they failed. But if you want more people in your army just to throw at enemies, of course, Caesar and Radd do just fine. I just think they are not interesting, so C tier. C tier for average and worse than Beck, because even though you get Beck later, at least Beck has a unique role. You know, where he does get slightly outshined by Jagen, but only slightly, because after all, being able to attack from range is something that Jagen just can't take away from him. But these guys just compare very badly in combat against a lot of people, because they don't do anything unique just because of being mercenaries. You don't only have to compare them to other mercenaries, you also have to think that your cavalry has better combat, your flyers have better combat. And to be honest, with those stats, maybe even your mages have better combat overall. Okay. Speaking of good combat, Cain. Now, everything I've said about Abel applies to Cain, so putting both of them on S tier is not a surprise. I normally tend to have Abel higher than Cain because I feel doubling is more important than doing damage and tanking most of the time, because if you prevent getting doubled, you are tankier. If you double, you end up doing more damage, and if you dodge, then well, you don't take damage at all. But in this case, I'm going to put Cain higher. Mostly because the stats in FE1 are just very low. So the enemy's being... Sorry, I'm going to do this. The enemy's being pretty low quality means Abel is going to double anyway, you know? And if Abel is going to double anyway, I mean, Cain is going to double anyway. It doesn't matter if he's the slowest of the two cavalry. He's still speedier than most of the things on the map. So if he doubles everything, he tanks better and he does more damage, what's really the downside? The Abel archetype is better in games where the enemy's stats are higher and the competition for benchmarks is tighter. You know, you have to work harder to be able to double enemies. Then that's when having a bit more speed really shines. But in this case, I do think Cain is better, just because, purely speaking about the stats, speed is not going to give you a lot, while you know, being able to tank a bit more, for example, in a game with big amounts of enemies at times, like FE1, could be very valuable. So I do think Cain has the slight advantage this time. Now continuing with the C. This is... I don't know who this is. Oh, this is Castor, of course. Castor the Hunter. Well, Castor the Hunter is pretty bad. He's an archer, but he doesn't... He just doesn't. He doesn't. He just doesn't really do it. I know on promotion he's supposed to get to Horseman, and I did try to do that on FE3. I don't even know if he can do that on FE1, but I don't think it's that relevant. The biggest problem for Castor is his horrible join time. No, not join time, like join stats and joining capabilities. He comes on chapter 2, yet another archer that you have to train, and when you compare him to Gordin, he doesn't really come out winning. He's a bit more mobile, but doesn't tank like Gordin does at times, doesn't do as much damage. I don't feel like he's speedier. He's a bit less accurate also. I just think that Castor isn't that good. So yeah, not that good, not that good. I would put him here, or even... No, I do think he has more potential than Barst. Even if Barst at the beginning is much better, I do think that Castor, if you keep during the whole game and you promote him into a horseman, he's better. It's such an effort though, and for what? For nothing in particular, so I'm just going to leave him there. It's not good. Let's just accept that. Castor is not good. Okay. Next unit is pretty good. We have Catria here. Catria, one of the White Wings, comes during the same chapter as Astram, has the capability to fly, has decent starting stats, maybe not as strong as Pala, a bit more room to grow, probably just wants to promote and turn into a wyvern, and I do think that the problem is that Shiida has the advantage over her. And Shiida, by the way, there's another thing I didn't mention about her. She has to be used to recruit a lot of units in this game, so you normally want to keep Shiida during the whole game. Catria brings a lot to the table, don't get me wrong. I just think she is directly inferior to Shiida. Even if you don't have to train her, training Shiida I don't think is that horrible, so yeah. I just think she's an inferior version. Still A tier, clearly, because of flying movement, but not the strongest incarnation of a White Wing ever. And in FE3, I know I didn't want to talk a lot about FE3, but being forced to dismount just makes it even worse. FE3 book 1, I mean, of course. In book 2, she's pretty broken. So yeah, I'd put her here, Shiida being higher. Well, this is Korth. I don't know how brief I can keep these things. To be honest, I'm tempted to move Barst. I'm going to move Board and Korth down there, but not Barst. Just so that if anyone is able to notice this in the thumbnail is going to make them furious. But yeah, Korth is the same up board. I honestly can't distinguish them. I don't know which one, which is the one that comes with a steel axe, which one comes with an iron axe. I think that's their weaponry, or one of them even has like an effective weapon, a hammer, something like that. Doesn't matter to me. They are both bad, so they go into F tier because they are literally bad. Darros. Darros is a pirate. Being a pirate is much better than you might imagine, because having that sea mobility, I do think makes you a bit more unique and slightly better than Barst. Not by a lot. Not by a lot, but enough to get you like this. No. I mean, let's not exaggerate. Bantu is still better. He's pretty strong. A bit more loop-sided than Barst. A bit more fragile. A bit faster and a bit more offensive-oriented. Yeah, I mean, if you give him good weaponry, I think he can do a better job than Barst. And being able to walk on water might seem like a very stupid thing, but in a game with no rescue and with actual, bad movement in some units, being able to cross certain rivers or certain patches of lake or sea can make the difference. So as long as there's not flyers around that can outspeed him and just reach the places where, pursue him and he can't escape, enemy flyers. As long as there's not a lot of those, I think Darros can take his time, walk into the water, get to the next shore. I don't think he's horrible, so at least the tier is fair. Maybe I was a bit too harsh. Yeah, I was a bit too harsh on Bantu. I'm going to put Bantu on C tier. And actually I'm going to put him higher than Caesar. But yeah, Darros remains there. Okay, well, you can here see another appearance of the board and Korth problem with Dolph. Dolph you get on the same chapter as Boah, Ageless Palace, and he's an armor. He has been trained up, but I think in FE1 you can't promote generals into armors. You can't promote armor knights into generals, which I know sounds stupid, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Why did they decide to do that? I don't know. They just really had it out for armors. If Board and Korth are an attempt to do an offensive unit that failed in the most miserable way, then Dolph and Macellan are basically the same, but in the defensive side of things. I do think because they come trained up, they are slightly better. So yeah, why don't we open the gap between them and Barst? I do think like Barst's stats are noticeably better. Okay, so yeah, Dolph and Macellan, they never bring anything unique to the table. They are supposed to be tanky, but at that point you'd rather tank with a cavalry and actually get to places, so F tier, and that's fair. Now here's Draug, and Draug as an armor is probably, maybe not the best, but one of the best options you get. He's not crazy, but he does help you at the very beginning, where maybe your tankiness isn't quite where you want it to be. Use a sword, which is sort of fun. He's not as inaccurate as some armors have proven to be in other games, but his potential on the long run is not that good. He's always going to bring something to the table because of, those chapters 1, 2, 3. So you're going to rely on him more than on other units. I do think that turns him like a higher spot than F, even if he's not crazy. Like middle of C tier seems fair. And yeah, because Bantu is better, but these guys are just so unoriginal, I don't think I can put them any higher. Alright, Elice. Elice is Marth's sister, and you get her very, very, very late. Like 1 or 2 chapters away from the end of the story. Also, she's the only unit that can use the Ogma stuff, which is useful to reviving someone. But aside from that, she's outclassed in every possible way by everyone. She's not promoted, so she can't do damage. And she doesn't have good magic, so her healing is pretty pathetic. As a filler healer, no pun intended, she does, you know, you can't complain about more healers, but why would I pick Elice when I can have someone like Boah be my filler and still do damage and have better magic and better ranks and better everything? Yeah, Elice's only selling point is Ogma usage and very high weapon level, where if you don't have anyone to use stuff like Fortify, then yeah, Elice is potentially a candidate. But join time is so bad, and starting stats are so bad for the bad join time, that I can't put her higher than D tier. Even if you really want to use that Ogma stuff, yeah, this should show just how shit I think Castor is. But yeah, Darros is better. Darros is better. I feel sorry about Elice because I think the concept of having someone that uses the exclusive stuff is sort of cool. But even on that chapter, using the Ogma stuff is a big pain in the ass because you can, in FE1, you can only use it if you're standing on the exact tile that represents the altar. So yeah, you can revive a unit you lost in the past, but to be able to do that, you almost have to go on a fucking RPG side quest, which is a very cool concept, but just not worth the effort. Alright, effort. Yeah, Est. The Est archetype. What can I say about the Est archetype that hasn't been said before? A trainee unit that comes pretty late into the story, gives Marth the Mercurius, which is irrelevant, and doesn't have very good starting stats or weapons or anything. It's just there to be trained and to be turned into a strong unit if you want. I think that Est is serviceable in this game. Don't get me wrong, you can... Everyone is not that difficult of a game. I've talked about low enemy quality before. So you can defeat enemies with Est, and you can get her to be like at a slightly high level and promote her. The only thing you have to ask yourself is it worth it? Like that stat advantage that Est is going to have over a trained Shiida, Kala or Patria, yeah. Kala or Catria. That is maybe going to be like what? On average, 3 stats per, 3 points per stat. Do you really need 3 more points if you're already doubling, if you're already one-rounding most things? Like, is all that training going to make the difference, or are Shiida, Pala, and Catria good enough, and training for Est is just being greedy? Of course, training her is an option. You can do it. Don't get me wrong. And if you want to use a trainee, in FE1 this is as trainee as it gets, in my opinion, with Est. And it's not even going to be a boring, horrible experience. Like, being able to fit the exact moment where getting a kill to Est would be nice. It's pretty fun to do, but I can't in good conscience say she's good. The starting stats problem, but with a bit more potential, so I guess better than Elice. I know the tier seems a bit harsh, but you have to think, join time is very bad. Stats are very bad. A tier list is all about how usable a unit is, should you use this unit. If you want to beat FE1, Est is not into the equation to beat FE1, okay? Est is just there for fun. So have that in mind. Yeah, this is the G. G for Gordin. Gordin the Archer. Now my takes about Gordin might surprise you, but I actually think Gordin is okay. Gordin is okay. I repeat, Gordin is okay. There's nothing wrong about using Gordin, because in this game you get a very, very, very powerful bow called Parthia, and at some point you probably want an archer to use it with. And yeah, you have some other better options, but giving Gordin Parthia eventually is completely fine. Gordin doesn't have very bad growths, is, you know, sort of useful at the beginning because you need every unit you have available to kill the enemies. So if for the first 3 chapters Gordin gets 2 or 3 good level ups and levels good stats, just let it roll, see where it takes you. I obviously don't think he's a good unit, I just think he's on the average, and that's just undeniable. And in my case, I was able to get him into a sniper, promote him. Weapon level was never a problem. Speed was like a slight problem, and compared to him, I do think that Jeorge is a bit better. But yeah, like Gordin, still have to put Gordin here, like on average, and to be honest, better than Bantu, because Bantu you can completely ignore and it would be fine, because Gordin, but Gordin probably does something more unique. Okay, considering that, then I have to put Draug here, because Draug is just... Draug doesn't have the promo. Yeah, I think Gordin is better than Draug. Yeah, he wasn't that slow after all. I put Gordin here. Call me crazy if you want. I know putting a base archer there might seem a bit crazy, but as I was saying, like on the starting chapters, you need every hand on the deck, and you need to make use of every tool you have. And probably Gordin is going to get some experience even if you don't want him to, just by weakening enemies. So just pay attention at his levels, and if you see they are good, keep him, and if you see they are bad, drop him. That's something to take into account, and I think that makes him an average unit, you know, one of the bunch. Oh, okay, this is a good unit here. Gotoh. Gotoh, once again, naming the archetype, is what I love this term, so I use it every time I get the chance. Mission control unit, meaning if there's a risk that on an important mission you get, you have the possibility to get a game over, sometimes the games like to give you some sort of safeguard. So in case you have lost a lot of your units and you reach the final chapter, so that you don't get very frustrated and you know are sort of soft blocked into the last chapter because of not having good units, they give you Gotoh. Gotoh is a very powerful mage. I think he has capped weapon levels or capped magic, one of the two, but the other is very good too. Speed is serviceable, tankiness is good, HP is okay, can deal with mana kits easily, which is what you want your units to do on the last chapter of FE1. Can deal with mana kits like very, very, very easily, you would be surprised. And when he isn't killing mana kits, he's healing. Now the availability is as bad as it can get, because you get him for the last chapter. Actually, in book 1 of FE3, you don't even get this guy, so that's how bad availability is. In one of the two versions of that book, he doesn't even exist. But Gotoh is good. Gotoh is a solid unit, and Gotoh is much more help on the final chapter than a lot of units are during the entire game. I at least B tier, and I'm tempted to put him here on A tier. Because yeah, a trained mage is normally not going to be as good as Gotoh. I don't think this is an Athos situation where Athos is like crazy good, like probably your best chance to kill the final boss. Yeah, I do think that Gotoh stays here for me. He's better than these guys. He's much better than Boah, because Boah doesn't do anything unique as a mage. He's cool, he's useful, but Boah is never going to be as good as Gotoh at the end. And Gotoh you don't have to train, you always get that guaranteed good unit. I guess he could be top of the tier, just to not get anyone furious, but yeah. He's just for one chapter, but he makes such a difference. He carries Marth's little separated group on the south. He's so good. Okay. We've moved from the G to the H with Hardin. Hardin in FE1, meaning Hardin the good guy. And yeah, good indeed. I think he's a very solid cavalry in that game. Maybe not as solid as the Christmas cavalry, but just by a little bit. The kind of difference that basically makes you go a tier below. He's speedy, he does damage, he has the good weapon level, but his growths aren't as good. So I do think when snowballing into a paladin is your priority, Hardin just doesn't go as hard, he doesn't become such a monster unit, which doesn't mean he's bad. I actually think he's better than Catria, and I'd say better than Shiida too, yeah. No, I do think Sheida's mobility in the early chapters can be very useful. Hardin, the problem with Hardin is you have been training these guys, they are probably at a higher level than him, they are better options for promotion. That doesn't mean that he's bad. He's just a bit less unique and helps you a little bit less, so I think having him an order of a tier below them is fair. But Hardin is still a very good unit, and if you don't mind having a bunch of cavalry, I guess that's the point. If you want to have only 2 cavalry, I would recommend the Christmas Caps. If you hate one of them, or if you want to you don't mind having 3 or more, bring Hardin into the mix. But they are clearly a step above. Well, actually, if you want to bring more cavalry, there's another option, which is this guy, Jagen. Jagen for Jagen, the architect. Early game pre-promote, very powerful, does incredible work, but falls off like crazy. And I don't mean like FE6 Marcus style or... No, this is like... It's an insane drop of quality you experience with Jagen. Jagen is so good at the beginning and so bad once you go like through 4 chapters and his Silver Lance starts, Silver Lance starts breaking. Then suddenly he's not able to kill anything, and these guys start getting good stats, and they seem better than Jagen. Still, the Jagen still has 1 or 2 points of movement over them, but they still have the promotion to look forward to. Jagen doesn't. Jagen gets his first level up, gives him absolutely nothing or 1 stat. You realize that Jagen is going to do nothing and you drop him on the spot, like during chapter 6, chapter 7 at most. But for the chapters he's good, he's very good, and he does make the difference. So he's like the complete opposite to Gotoh. If Gotoh carries you through the late game, he carries you through the early game and for a bit longer, so I do think he has to be higher. Better than Catria and than Hardin in that sense, and better than Shiida, because Shiida's combat, after all, as I said, is not crazy. So yes, top of the A tier. With Jagen, your mentality has to be, Jagen is never going to make it into the endgame, okay? You don't use Jagen to be able to bring Jagen into the final chapter. That's not going to happen. Even if you want to give him all your stat boosters and all your, just to prove a point and bring him into the last map, that's not what the unit is designed for. Okay, you are going against the natural order of things by using Jagen. Jagen is supposed to help you at the beginning and to fall off because he's your mentor. He's not your fucking hero, he's not your carry. He's the one that teaches you how to play, and he's the one that saves your ass during the beginning, but no more. So, you know, like a tutorial mode packed into a single unit, he's useful that way. I would put him there, but no higher. This is Jake. Well, if Beck was there, Jake I think has to be a bit higher. About there. Ballistician, slightly earlier joining type, on the chapter before the Ageless Palace, the Northern Market is called. On the chapter of the Northern Market, so just a bit later than Caesar, much better because of being a Ballistician. Weird class, but also weird utility. I don't think Boah's utility outshines Jake's a little bit, like finding a spot for healer and magic utility is easier than finding a spot for Ballistician. But hey, Ballistician is a unique thing, and if you want to use one, Jake is the better option, so there he goes. Now, everything I said about Gordin that makes him a decent option, being able to use Parthia, FE1 being a game where sometimes having 2 range is a good thing, that applies to Jeorge, times 10. Jeorge is just the perfect archer in this game. Comes with a very good weapon level. I don't think he's quite at the point where he can use Parthia on base, but he's very close to doing it. So with Jeorge, the normal thing for you is going to be just let him kill some enemies, like 3-4 enemies, get him a level. He levels up weapon level almost always because his growth is very good in that aspect, and he gets to use Parthia. I think that's more or less how he rolls. He's also pre-promoted. Instead of being an archer, he's a sniper. So better mobility than Gordin, better speed, very good skill, good damage, a bit more solid HP pool. Like Gordin if you didn't have to invest absolutely anything in him. He's there for a long time in the game, so I do think A tier is fair. I'm really feeling the A tier, I know, but I feel like there's a bunch of crappy units to come, so don't worry. Maybe... No, bottom of B tier is fair. Bottom of B tier. The guy is just very good. He uses bows, he uses them well, and in this game, using a javelin is just not as reliable, so I think Jeorge is a good unit to use. Okay, then Julian. Julian is the first thief you get in this game. In this game, there's no items to steal, and you can always open any chest by using Marth. It's true that you want to get Marth to the throne, or you can conquer, but yeah, do you really want to waste a spot in your deployment order to deploy a thief? Normally deploying a thief isn't worth it. If you wanted to deploy a thief, it would be Julian, so Julian is the best out of the thieves. But anyways, I do think he falls under that category of weird utility that, yeah, around there. Like I think Bantu can do better. I think Julian lasts for longer during the game, but his combat is horrible. He's just like purely a chest opening and door opening utility. Actually, door opening is very good on the last map. So that alone might... yeah, that alone puts him at top of C tier just because in the final map there's a lot of closed doors and you really want to open them. So just because of that, I'm going to put Julian there. But yeah, he's a utility bot. There's not much going on with him aside from just, you know, being able to open doors and open chests. Julian comes together with the lovely Lena. Lena the healer and the archetype. Early game healer, chapter 3, I think it is. Solid unit, good unit. Can heal and does the healing better than anyone up to that point. I think she's also the only unit that can use hammer, so that's useful. And comes with a warp, I think too, so that's something only she can do at that point, because I think the weapon level is a bit too high for Ree, if I remember correctly. Also, she comes with it in her inventory, so why use someone else? Warp in this game is infinite range, so you can venture how broken it is. I think Lena is a very, very good unit. Very good utility unit, but, you know, in the good sense, better than you two. I wouldn't say better than Hardin, I guess. No, I do think she's better than Hardin. Honestly, I might be going crazy, but no. Not that good. But yeah, she is better than Shiida. Yes, not as good as Jagen maybe, because you can substitute her and she doesn't hurt the game as much as Jagen would. With promotion, I don't think her combat gets very good because her growths aren't crazy. She gets magic, but the speed is never going to be very good. If you have a bishop ring, I would use it on someone else. So yeah, that's where I would place her. Okay, Linde, the mage. She's a pretty solid mage. You get her in Northern Market, same map as you get Jake. Availability isn't bad, and you kind of have to train Linde if you want to use Starlight against Garneth. Otherwise, it's going to be just a very painful endeavor. But being forced to train Linde doesn't mean training Linde is that easy. She gets to use Aura, which is a very powerful spell, and normally one-shots a lot of enemies. But it's such a heavy spell that, well, it basically means that Linde is limited to player phase, which is good. You know, it's good. Like, her combat is still going to be good if she can defeat one enemy every turn. But with mobility being low, and no staff utility until she promotes, and honestly you might want to promote Merrick at that point because he can have better combat. I just think that Linde isn't that crazy. I think she's good, and I think you need to train her, so most of the time people will probably confuse how good she ended up being for how good she was supposed to be, you know? But imagine a world in which Starlight could be used by anyone. Would you train Linde to give her Starlight, or would you give it to Merrick? Who's just like, you know, obviously better. Yeah, I think the answer is clear. I think Linde isn't that good. The Force Starlight is a bit of a psyop. I think she deserves to be in B tier, don't get me wrong. Still better than Astram and the bunch because, after all, comes sort of early and can do magical damage, which is at times helpful. So a bit better than this guy, to be honest, because of the potential to grow, but not better than Gotoh. Not better than Gotoh because Gotoh's combat at the end is going to outshine Linde's performance during the whole game, so I leave it there. Might seem like I'm crazy, but you really have to invest a lot in Linde if you want her to get good. Yes, I implore you to think about it before you leave an angry comment about how Linde carried you through the game. Okay, then there's Lorenz. Easily one of my favorite characters in FE1. Not unit, character I mean. I just love the guy, I think he's very cool. He's a general, so tankier than Draug and Dolph and Macellan and all that people. But yeah, he's still not crazy. He comes pretty late, and at that point your cavalry has promoted and is insane, and I'm going to do this actually. About that. Okay, better. Yeah. Probably by the point you get Lorenz, you have better options to tank, better options to combat, and his low movement has gone from slightly annoying to is kind of making you useless. But you can't deny his combat is good. His tankiness is there, and if you need sort of a movable rock that can tank enemies and hit them back, Lorenz is your guy. So he can deal with some mana kills, he can deal with some enemies, he has the potential to one-shot some people, even if not incredibly reliable at doing it. I just think he maybe lacks the maps to be able to do that. So I don't want to put him too high, but I do think it's very similar to Bantu in some ways. They are very tanky, they can do some things, but they don't really get the opportunity to shine that much. I'm absolutely crazy putting these guys over Bantu. Like, what the hell am I doing? No, these two have to be over you. And then Lorenz has to be under Bantu, because Bantu has more opportunities to do stuff. Lorenz, you don't have to train at all, which is pretty nice. And if you don't have a candidate for the Gradibu, that's why you get Lorenz, basically, because you get him the same chapter you get the Gradibu. So you could have someone with a very powerful weapon. Yeah, I do think he's a better unit than Bantu by the time you get him. But Bantu lasts longer through the game, so let's leave it there. Okay. Well, the F tier is looking absolutely ridiculous with Macellan being put there. By the way, can you distinguish Dolph and Gordin, Macellan, and the other? Okay, can you? There we go. Can you tell me which one is which? Yeah, Dolph, Macellan, Gordin. They are bad. They are rocks. They don't move. They are inaccurate. I do think they are slightly better because at least they can tank something, but that's about it. They are bad. Okay, Maria. Maria is a healer. And unfortunately her join time is much worse than Lena's, so that means she's not going to be as useful. But well, it's not horrible. It's like, what, level chapter 8, chapter 9? You can still get some utility out of Maria. Her magic growth is supposed to be better than Lena. Like, she's supposed to have a better start than Lena. The problem is that you have been using Lena for a while, so yeah. In a game where you don't have things like troubadours, she's supposed to represent the spot that Maribel fills in Awakening, for example, if you have played the game. Or that... yeah, she's like the second healer that's stronger than the first one, but you have been using the first one, so by the time you get the second, the first one is actually better. I don't know if you get my point. And she's like still very fragile, and you know, her chances at having good combat when promoting are slim. So I appreciate her utility, but I think she's about that, about utility. So slightly under Boah, just because Boah has the combat on base and you don't have to dedicate the guiding ring. So this guy Boah is better, but she's similar in a lot of aspects. Because with Boah, my experience is that I normally ended up using him as a sort of a heal bot, even if his magic was good. Maria's magic is okay, and if you keep using her, actually in FE1 you don't get experience by healing. Yeah, don't forget about that, like Maria's garbage. And Lena is actually much worse than I... Yeah, Maria is there. Staff bot is good, but come on, like I'm not crazy. Okay, I almost forgot for a moment, but yeah, staff bot in this game is not a useful thing. Being able to use stapes is of course good, but if you can promote and also have the combat there, you're much better. Marth. I think Marth is S tier. I wouldn't be able to tell you why, but every time I've used Marth, Marth has turned into one of my craziest units. I think the Falcon is completely broken. I think the Binding Shield in FE3 is also very broken, but I think the Falcon in FE1 is like, it's crazy. You can destroy entire hordes of mana kids. Is your only hope to defeat the final boss, which I know is part of the narrative, but still makes him a useful unit. His combat isn't even bad, and he's going to have a hard time, going around and visiting all the villages, but I think Marth is still very, very, very good. So S tier, under the cavalry, but higher than people like Hardin, because Marth's combat in my case just kept on growing and growing and growing and growing. It's true I gave him the boots on every run I use him. There's probably better people to use the boots on, to have, an overkill mobility unit, instead of just your lord being able to reach the throne faster, but I'm happy with my decision because in all my trades, Marth was very good. I do know Marth takes like a heavy nerf in the remix, and I'm excited to play those because I have no problem with weak lords. After all, FE6 is my favorite Fire Emblem. So. Alright, Matthis. Matthis is a cavalry that comes, at a point where maybe you've already made up your mind about which cavalry you want to use. Matthis is okay. He's just not crazy. He's there. He's good. He's like the... If I had to compare him to something, he's like the Caesar of cavalry. Okay? That makes sense? So, actually, you should. the Caesar of cavalry. So, but yes, by being a cavalry, he's better, because he's a cavalry. So, I will have to put him here. When among the generics, being a cavalry makes him better. And slightly better than you also. Door opening capabilities are still going to carry you, Julian, but yeah, Matthis can be there. An uncomfortable, situation between brothers-in-law. Okay, yeah, Matthis is solid. I think he comes with a steel lance, so that must mean his weapon levels are decent. I don't like to re-check stats before doing my tier list. I just like to, give my opinions and my impressions on units. Maybe Shiida actually has an 80% growth on strength in FE1, and I never realized. I'm pretty sure that's not the case. But maybe there's a unit I get the feeling that has a very low stat and actually doesn't. Okay, but Matthis, I'm pretty sure had some problems doubling, wasn't that tanky, but was able to do a good amount of damage. So yeah, Arran is better. It's a direct upgrade over this guy. Being almost at the top of the C tier, top of the average, is a fair assumption. Merrick, in my opinion, is... I still have to think about it, but I'd say, top of my head, he's as good as a mage can get in this game. Okay? He's solid, comes early, promotes easily, gains healing upon promotion, and... yeah, it put him there. Because of Excalibur. Excalibur is very useful against wyverns, and wyverns are some of the strongest enemies you can face in this game. Also, having magic means you can attack mana kids. Mana kids in this game have one range in FE1, so being able to attack from range and one round them is crazy. Merrick has pretty good speed, better than Linde's. So being able to double with magic makes him even more powerful. Resistance stat is is like absolutely inexistent in this game. Merrick is just able to fireball his way through the early game, through the mid game, and through the late game. One of the most solid mages I think I've used in my life. I was surprised by how good he was. I honestly thought he would be like a middling unit. I might have been crazy lucky with the level ups, but my impression is that he has decent magic, he has very good speed, and he gets a very powerful, super effective tome that comes incredibly useful at times, like for example the Michaelis map. So overall, Merrick is one of the GOATs in my book. Okay, this would be Media. Media comes the same time as Boah, Dolph, Macellan, and Thomas, that we still haven't seen. The thing with Media is, unlike Arran, I felt like her combat was a bit worse. Might be a bit of a sexist thing, but Fire Emblem almost always seems to want to make the girls faster, you know, faster, dodgier, but also less tanky and weaker. You know, so guys are burly, we are tanky, we hit hard, and the girls are like more subtle about their combat. Almost like when you compare a girl and a guy, they seem to be like the girl is the Abel and the guy is the Cain in the comparison. I don't know if I'm explaining myself here. Well, Media comes at a good moment and she still has some ways to go, and you know, being a paladin means you don't have to promote her, but I find her a bit too frail to consider her like an incredible unit. She's good. So B tier is guaranteed, and I put her here. I think Arran is just better. Arran has less time in the game, but the less time he has in the game, he does a better job. Because he's tankier, because he comes a bit more trained, and because his starting stats are just good. Media, I used to recruit Astram, then she sort of can do things, but she has like what, survivability against 2 enemies and then she dies. While Arran, I remember being able to battle like 5 enemies and he completely destroys them. Alright guys, it's time to talk about Minerva. Minerva is, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, the best unit in the game. I don't know if this is a popular thing to think. I haven't checked the opinions of most people about this game. I just know that in my particular case, Minerva was a monster. A monster. She just tanked everything, killed everything, was able to use good weapons on base, growths weren't bad, came pre-promoted, so no need for investment in that sense. She was very strong on join time, and as I kept using her, she just outshined every flyer I had. Was like a fucking flying paladin. It's true that paladin combat was at times better. Like I do think that a promoted Christmas Cab or even Hardin can be stronger than her. And I do think that, you know, Marth and Merrick are better against certain enemies. But Minerva is just so crazy good for a flyer. Like being able to do that, and the moment you are in danger, you're battling like 6 fucking paladins. You battle against them, you counter with a horse slayer, you kill almost all of them. You see that there's more enemies coming for you and you're low on health. And you go into the fucking sea, flying, and they suddenly can't target you. I think she's crazy good. And she comes very early in this game. Very early. I do get the feeling that when I make an FE3 tier list, Pala is going to be occupying this spot. Because Pala was sort of like this, except still have the option to promote, which is both good and bad. Needs the investment, but turns even crazier. Minerva might not be that incredibly overkill, I do think that Catria, Pala, when promoted, might be a bit better, but Minerva comes so early and has so much damage for her join time and just doesn't ever fall off. I think that's important to consider, so I'm going to put her the highest in the game S tier. Okay, Navarre. Well, when I was talking about Caesar not being that good, Astram maybe not being that good, that's because there's these two guys, Navarre and Ogma. Actually, I'm going to talk about both of them together, if you don't mind. Navarre and Ogma are mercenaries, and mercenaries in this game are pretty good. In FE3 they are absolutely incredible, because in indoors map they kind of shine even more because your flyers and your mounted units have to dismount, so suddenly the mercenary movement is even better. But yeah, Navarre and Ogma are just very solid, good speed, decent defenses, good attack. The differences between the two of them is Ogma is more stacked in defense and attack, and has like a good starting level and comes a bit earlier. Navarre comes a little bit later, I think 1 chapter later exactly, but recruited as an enemy, so you probably don't use him a lot in that one, on the Soothsayer thingy. But he does come with a killing edge, and because trading is a problem, he has that critical going, and he's a very speedy unit. As I said, I don't think speed is that necessary to be faster than the enemies. Normally a mercenary or a hero, if you promote him, is going to be faster than any enemy. And if you give any of these guys a Wyrmslayer, they are still going to reach the necessary amount of damage to kill mana kids. So I guess what I mean to say is they seem pretty similar to me. Ogma is probably better because he comes earlier, so I will put Ogma over them, like the highest of the two. But they seem very, very similar to me. They are very good units. Very good units. I'd say that Merrick is more unique to me. Like the mage damage in FE1 is very, 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 very good. And I don't think you need your mercenaries so much because of your mounted units combat being so solid. You could make an argument for Shiida being higher than them, and I'm going to make that argument. I think the Shiida is higher than them. But yeah, they are pretty similar. They represent their archetypes. Ogma is supposed to not have very good growths, because he's sort of like your... also a bit of a mentor role, like Jagen has. But his bases are so good, and promotion is so good, that it doesn't really make a difference to me. I think his bases and the promo just carry him through the game and make him viable for endgame alone. So yeah, I think they deserve to be both in 80. Okay, another unit I should have probably talked about together with someone else is Pala. Pala is very similar to Catria. Yes, better. There's not much to say about it. They come together. Pala is closer to promo, so even the smallest stat differences don't matter when you're closer to promo, because the one thing Pala and Catria want to shine even more in FE1 is to promote. So if you're able to promote any of them, then that's about it. Honestly, I'm going to do this, just for, you know, the more conservative people that way can be happy. I have 5 people in my S tier, and this one gets a bit reduced, okay? But yeah, Pala deserves to be there. Obviously, very similar to Catria, just has an easier time reaching promo, turning into a wyvern, and then I think she compares pretty well to Minerva, albeit with all the investment. And she doesn't quite reach the Shiida tier, in my opinion, but that's okay. Like, very few units do. Okay, this would be with the P, no, with the... Who the hell is this guy? This is Radd. Okay, Caesar clone. Except Radd is better, because Radd's inventory I remember being better, actively. Radd is a bit of a meme, because there's like a fanfic somewhere. I remember hearing Mecha talking about this. There's like a fanfic, incredibly edgy, protagonized by Radd, where he calls himself Radd Quetz, and he's continuously talking about, you know, how strong he is and how powerful he is, and yeah, okay, that's fine. He's a mercenary, he's okay, he's average. I don't think there's nothing crazy to say about him. He just stays there with Caesar because they are basically the same unit, with a recolor. At least they bothered with the recolor, so they knew they were better than these guys. This guy, considering this is Roger, against all odds, even though he looks very different from F3, this has to be Ricard. So that means a direct downgrade from Julian, but basically the same capabilities. I mean, Julian comes much earlier, so I do think we have to appreciate that, but because you are utility, like utility in a unit, here would be good, in my opinion. Yeah, because this guy's, better than Lorenz. Not better than Lorenz. Being able to use Gradible is a big deal. Normally you're going to use Julian. If Julian is dead, you might consider Ricard. I don't think there's a lot of chances for you to bring 2 thieves, considering if you want to open chests with 2 units, you have Marth. And you can also buy chest keys. So yeah, to be honest, Ricard might be a garbage unit, and I might be overhyping him, all things considered, but I'm putting him here. That's about it. Okay, now this is Roger, a character I've come to name the Simp of Grass. He's a guy that completely abandons his entire country just because he thinks Shiida looks cute, which, to be fair, a lot of units do. Roger is an armor with decent starting stats, but he's an armor. So he doesn't really do anything for you, I feel. He's solid. You know, he probably is a solid unit, but I wouldn't put him higher than... I put him higher than Est, but that's about it. I do think that Darros is better. So yeah, that's my place for Roger. There's just not a lot of things that a knight can do in this game. Okay. Alright, we're doing big zoom in here, but I think it's working. Well, except for the fact that I can't put any more units into C tier. Now, because this is Roger, this would be with the S, right? No, with the R, this is Rosia. Rosia the cavalry. Okay, prepare to have more rows in here. Actually, let's not list it. You can see the save and unload is not going to kill you. Yeah, Rosia is a good unit. Rosia is a good unit. He's a cavalry, and he comes with actually pretty decent stats. I remember Rosia being like the distinctively better one out of the cavalry. I think Violence is a bit worse. Violence is, by the way, this guy that looks exactly like Matthis. But Rosia gets a bit of a design, and that's for a reason he's slightly better. He does need some training, so... I mean, B tier, but not high B tier. Is he more unique than Maria's pure staff botting? I don't think so. I think I want him there, at the bottom of B tier. Yeah, that's a good placement for Rosia. Rosia is sort of relevant in FE3 in terms of a story, but aside from that, there's not much I can say about Rosia. I didn't use him. He seems like an okay cavalry to me. There's just so many cavalry that I can't use everyone. So he comes at the same time as Hardin, and Hardin is clearly much better. These guys are clearly much better. Pre-promos in the future are slightly better, all things considered, so this is a fair placement. Better than Matthis. That's cool. This guy is Samson. Samson is the guy you get if you don't get Arran. I think Arran is better, but that doesn't mean that Samson is bad. Not at all. Actually, Samson is a very, very solid non-investment required unit. I put him over Russia. And honestly over Maria? Yeah, but not over Media, because Media still has, the cavalry movement and all that. Yeah, I think Samson's combat is not as good as Astram, and obviously not as good as these guys. And obviously can't even compare to the likes of the Christmas Cups or I don't know, Marth on the endgame, stuff like that. And Marth is getting close to the endgame, so by the point you get Samson, he might look a bit like Marth, but without the potential to get the Falcon and be crazy. Also, Marth is the sole user of Mercurius in this game. That's why he's so good, by the way. I think Samson B tier there is a fair placement. I think he can do a good job as a merc. He's just not a game-breaking unit. He doesn't really... He tips the balance in your favor, but he doesn't tip the balance too much. He's just another unit to add and to keep your army as consistently good as it probably is by that point. Alright. Now this isn't Thomas. This is Sethgar. Sethgar the Bowman. Because we are going in alphabetical order. This is Thomas. This is Sethgar. Sethgar the Bowman, I do think that being a bow on cavalry can have its uses in this game. So I'm going to give Sethgar the benefit of the doubt. I have to give him the benefit of the doubt because I didn't touch the guy. And I'm going to put him sort of high in the C tier. Not having enemy phase doesn't allow me to put you any higher, but I do think you are better than this guy. Than fucking Beck. Because yeah, yes. Potential to use Parthian maybe is not very good because your weapon levels aren't that good, but you're clearly much better than Castor. You have the mobility, you have the damage. Stats aren't crazy and you never get to promote because you are already promoted, technically. So I guess in that sense you are not very good, but at least you can, have mobility and kill wyverns, which, to be fair, is more than most units in the game can do. This is Tiki. I honestly think that even though Tiki is very broken in FE3, she might have been nerfed compared to how broken she was in FE1. In FE1 there's nothing a mana kit can do against Tiki. And during the endgame, like 50% of the enemies you battle, maybe even more, are going to be mana kits. So Tiki is instrumental in beating the game. Now her availability isn't crazy, so I don't want to put her very high, even though her combat is better than everyone, all things considered, circumstances considered. So I think just 1 over Jagen is okay, 1 under Marth. Marth helps you for longer, it's not as good as her. She just, clears chapters. Not even mages do a lot. It's true that not having 1 to range is sort of annoying, but aside from that, this is one of the units that carries you through the endgame and through the last, 6 chapters. Which, considering the length of the game, I'd say is pretty fair. She's just a good unit, and the Divine Stone, you would have to really spam transform to consume the Divine Stone. Okay? I think I'm going to lower these two. I've been looking at them for a while and they are an average. They are bad. Let's be honest here. They are bad. Just in time to get Thomas and put him even lower than them. Thomas in my book, goes... Where does Thomas go? Like here? One order of a tier under Gordin. This is ridiculous as fuck. The portraits in this game are a nightmare. Yeah, Thomas goes directly under Gordin because of all the time he didn't have to train. It's true he comes with some levels, but he doesn't really get the chance to promote. Starting stats aren't great. He's better than Castor. I mean, with the potential for Parthia, I guess he is still better than Elice, but not better than Est. Because if you are considering both of them to be units that you can train, Est clearly has the advantage. And Royer is more solid, so yeah. There in the D tier, I think is pretty fair. Now this is yeah, Villain Saga. Yeah, solid guy, more or less like Russia. That was my thought when I saw him. I remember Russia being slightly better, but I do think they are basically the same. There's not a lot you can say here. They come at the same time. They are both cavalry. They are more or less as close to promotion. I don't remember which one is higher. They have similar growths, similar stats. So they can be helpful, and they are cavalry. So that's why they are BTR, because they are cavalry and they come sort of early. There's not a lot else to say. I do remember Matthis struggling a bit more with his stats, so that's why he is like a bit lower, but the difference isn't that big, if you notice. Starting with the W is Wendell. Wendell is a unit that I sincerely consider to be one of the best in the game. He's a pre-promoted bishop, and even though his combat isn't crazy because his magic isn't very high, and I don't know, I feel like he's limited to... You really have to use very powerful tomes to be able to make Wendell do a lot of damage, okay? Because his growths aren't going to carry him further, so Merrick has the highest potential out of any mage in the game. But Wendell stays pretty close. And he does have the healing utility from the very, very beginning you get him. And you get him pretty early, like chapter 5, I think it is. So yeah, Wendell is a solid ass unit. Very, very, very solid. If I had to give him a range, I'd say over Hardin, but under Ogma Navarre. He's just very good at doing what he does. Okay, he just uses staves, does magic, doesn't particularly grow as a unit, so that's the reason why he can't compare to you, but he's clearly better than you, so he has to be in this tier because you're the ones heading and tailing the A tier, and that's about it. Well, this one is going to be useful. This one is going to be easy. This is Wolf, and I've already talked about Sedgar, things I consider Sedgar to be good at, and I remember Wolf having a slightly better level. And I think he has a slightly better stats, so going off my mind, I'm going to put Wolf a bit higher. But that's the only difference you have between the two of them. They are archers, they are cavalry, they can attack enemies, and their effectiveness against wyverns probably makes them useful at some point. Now for an FE1 exclusive unit that got deleted in FE3 Book 1, Rhi. Rhi is bad. Lena outclasses Rhi so much, and during the early chapters, you don't need a healer. Like, you really don't. You really don't. With like 2 vulnerabilities, you can get through those chapters easily. Rhi, I mean, his starting stats are horrible. He has no way to grow those stats because, you know, staves don't give you the chance to promote. So really, what is there for Radd to do in the whole game? Almost nothing, like some healing at the beginning, which I know is sort of helpful. But that's about it. I mean, contributing at the beginning a little bit, I guess, is something. So at least he compares to Castor and to Barst in that regard. So I can't put him on F tier. But yeah, like... yeah, the guy is just not going to do much. I think he's better than Barst. I think he's worse than I think he's better than Castor too, to be honest. He's really stuck in there with Elice. Like, if Elice has 2 chapters to heal, then he also has 2 chapters to heal. But she has the good weapon level, and usage he doesn't. And that's about it. I know you could bring him at any time as a filler healer, but I'm not falling for it. He's bad. And finally, and it's a very weird unit to finish with, Cain. Now, contrary to popular belief, I think Cain is not good. Why do they say against popular belief? I don't know the popular belief. I just think Cain isn't that good. At first I was excited because, you know, the chameleon class almost seems like as if you had a dance that lasts for several turns, you know? The way they normally explain to you why dancers are so good is a dancer can make one of your units, of your best units, act twice in the same turn. So it's like having your best unit twice. So you can understand why Cain transforming into someone like Minerva, Cain, Abel would seem like a very good idea. The problem is that, first of all, the great thing about dancers is their flexibility. They can make the best unit for you during that turn act again. Meaning, they can either make a combat unit attack again, or maybe you need a bit more utility like effective damage or magic to be used, they can act again. Maybe you need a healer, they can make the healer act again. But with Cain, you sort of compromise to turn into a unit for a certain set amount of turns. And after those turns pass, by the way, Cain is absolutely useless. He needs to use his own set of weaponry, and he doesn't... How do I explain this? He doesn't share the HP with the other unit. He has his own set of HP, and his HP is pretty bad. And it actually hurts his tankiness a lot. So, even if it might seem like Cain copying someone makes him as good as them, I'd say Cain mostly... Whenever I brought him into the team, I felt like he was pure, like the purest form of filler. Now that utility is still clearly better than someone like Bantu, so I think we are safe saying that. And yeah, here for example, like he wouldn't be able to copy a ballistician effectively because he would need to have ballista weaponry. That's one of the big problems. And trading weapon on and off in FE1 is a pain. I do think he's better than you because he can copy you and then you. But he doesn't copy special things like, for example, opening doors, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, comparing your utility, I just think Cain doesn't quite break the game like I originally assumed he would be able to. Maybe it's my mistake for expecting too much out of him, but yeah. I'd put Cain in the C tier. A guy that can copy everyone ends up just being average. And that would be the whole tier list for me. I've been able to talk about this game for longer than I expected. I thought it was going to be like maybe 40 minutes. I think I've gone up to an hour and a half. So sorry for the long tier list once again. I seem to be unable to do a short tier list. But that's logical considering Fire Emblem has a very vast, character cast normally. Yeah, so looking for the bottom, Bordancourt, Macellan and Dolph, pretty bad. Barst is slightly better. These are units that can contribute a little bit. You contribute a little bit at the beginning, you at the end. Yes, I really think you are sort of useful, maybe. Together with Roger, with Darros, I could make some use of you through the middle game. S has the potential, so I can't put her in F tier, but aside from that, she's pretty bad. These are units that actually contribute more at the beginning, I think, and have the potential to grow, I guess. Ricard has the utility. You have the pure ball of stats. You just come very late. Utility, sort of utility. Some, the start of having combat, and more top of the purely utility units. Then on B tier, the actually decent units. Russian Villains, Maria with some, healing and some actual stats that are never going to level up. Samson for the combat, Media, Arran, a bit of, ballistician combating here from Jake. We have the healing and the magic, combat, Linde having some actual combat, and obviously Gotoh carrying the last chapter. And finally, Warp and Hammer, just alone, Parthia usage, good flyers, good cavalry, good mage, mercenaries, best flyer in my opinion, well, second best flyer, sorry, best mage in my opinion, the hard carry of Jagen during the early, the special capabilities of Tiki and Marth during the late game, and the 3 best combat units, high mobility, high stats, high everything, and no problem to promote in the case of those 2. Yeah, I'm happy with those results. I think looking over the tier list, there's nothing I would move. I think everyone is where they should be. I do think there's like an order of difference between these two and between these two. Maybe you would swap some placements. Maybe you fundamentally disagree with what I have been saying for a while. If you do, please let me know. This isn't a game I'm an expert on, so I'm more willing to take criticism in this than in others. Let's just say that, so that they seem like I'm not like I'm a good person. And yeah, that's going to do it for this tier list though. Hope you enjoyed. I hope it was useful. In case it's the first time playing the game, do enjoy it. And yeah, this has been Pomon. If you liked, consider liking, subscribing, leaving a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.